Welcome to the Patient Podcast, a series of conversations with innovators, HR leaders, and benefit advisors about how they're solving benefit challenges and building healthier communities by helping people access and afford healthcare. Hi, I'm Laura Cave, and we are excited today to welcome Cameron Betts of Mercer for a conversation about the health and benefit trends that HR leaders need to know going into 2024. We're all aware of this year's big headlines. Inflation is driving up prices that are squeezing families' wallets. People are deferring or forgoing care in record numbers, and attraction and retention of workers has been a real challenge for employers. I want to ask Cameron to share with us what he thinks is real versus what's just noise. And likewise, we've heard about the push toward benefit strategies that are meant to help employers cope with these challenges. Things like high deductible health plans, health savings accounts, now lifestyle spending accounts. And we'll hear Cameron's point of view on these strategies, which ones he thinks are here to stay and which ones aren't really serving our employee populations. So, by way of introduction, Cameron is the senior principal with Mercer, where he consults on health and benefits strategy for US based and global employers. He's an expert in population health management and all the pieces that go into the benefit programs that keep teams healthy and productive at work, including things like virtual care, family benefits, musculoskeletal, diversity and inclusion, caregiving, chronic disease management, compliance, and so much more. He's joining us today from sunny Southern California. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Thank you very, very much. Pleasure to be here. And it is, in fact, really cloudy today.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. You're probably getting a little bit of June gloom early.
We are. It'll be gone by, in a couple hours. So don't feel bad.
Okay. All right. I won't cry for you. So I want to start out by having you share a little bit about your story. How exactly does one become a subject matter expert in health and benefits, and what do you love about it?
There is absolutely nothing linear about or planned. It is falling backwards into a whole bunch of just healthcare innovation. Once upon a time, I'll kind of start at the very beginning. Once upon a time, I thought I wanted to be a hospital executive. And I went to school at University of Kansas School of Medicine for that. It is a business degree from a medical university, which is really bizarre. The business school said, we don't really know much about healthcare. We'll kick it to the hospital. The hospital said, we'll get some health economists and heads of hospitals to join and teach. And so what was really nice about that, not to go too long, was that most of my professors were hospital administrators, or they contracted with providers, or they were providers themselves. And it really got me steeped into just trying to understand the U.S. healthcare system, the delivery, how it works. I don't know that one person can be an expert in that, as it is completely ever evolving.
Right.
But it was great. It was foundational. Once I realized I didn't want to be a hospital CEO, I started working for a major carrier in Kansas City, just doing your standard day-to-day blocking and tackling marketing. But myself and just a handful of others had a wacky idea. This was a long time ago, of what if we really put the focus on prevention? What if we really got people to understand where they were in their lives, in their healthcare? And so we put together the very first carrier-based wellness program. I'm going to use that in air quotes because it was so long ago that it was just blood pressure, height, weight, glucose. We were using a survey that had 26 questions on it that most people lied about. And from there, we started to see what the impact was. We did have some wake-up calls. People were like, I had no idea I had high blood pressure, or I had no idea that I had glucose that needed attention. And so we started to get people connected with not only their healthcare, but the healthcare system. From there, it was the analytics. What happened? Did anybody get healthier? Where did we impact spend? Where did we impact utilization? Emergency rooms, pharmacy, care management, you name it. Detection of chronic diseases and cancers. So worked on that. and it was always what's new, what's innovative. I then got a great offer to move out to Los Angeles. Um, and we've been out here ever since for about 13 years now. And it was working with employers of all shapes and sizes, from a small 150 life group to a, the global brands that are in everyone's pockets, or on their counters, so, or on their feet. So really just was amazing to see the different needs of different populations, the different needs of different HR teams and companies, and lastly, since I've been in this long enough, to watch the evolution of innovation happen, that went
Right.
from on-site biometric screenings to now apps that directly interact with the individual. My focus has always been around the innovation piece. I've been on the vendor side on product, and trying to help individuals understand what the need is and what the ask is. It's not just what the need of the employer is or what can be sold, but what the user wants. And
Right. Yeah.
oftentimes that's the part that gets forgotten, or at least it's the last one that comes to the table.
Yeah.
But that's my focus, and I've been doing it for a long time, and I've seen a lot of things. But the last part of your question, and then I'll stop blathering, was um, what do I love about it?
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, cool offerings all day long, that are moving from just being condition specific to really taking in the entire thought process of the individual. Having watching employers move from, we have to focus on our medical and pharmacy costs, to let's look at DE and I efforts. Let's look
Right.
at SDOH. Let's think about how our people are living and experiencing care and
Right.
experiencing their lives, and how do we show up as an employer for them. So that's the fun part.
That's awesome. I love your background because you truly have been around every part of the system.
Yeah,
I know our founder's background is in hospital administration too, and it's exactly the center of where, like, so often the wheel turns around that care delivery moment, that process, the cost there. And so I think it is a fantastic starting point for understanding how all of everything that on top of it comes from that foundation. So
yeah.
that's really cool.
Thank you.
Um, so in the intro, I mentioned, some of the big challenges that employers are facing today. It's all over the trade publications, magazines. We've been talking about it on this show. And I'm wondering, what are the things that HR leaders really need to be worrying about? And is any of it just kind of noise?
Yeah. I I don't want to call it noise. But when you look at inflation, when you look at turnover, when you look at the rising cost of healthcare, it's not noise, it's wallpaper. It's ever present.
Hmm.
It's always gonna,
Yeah.
it's always there. And
Right.
as new strategies evolve, and as new um, just technologies or plan offerings or ways that employers are trying to get in front of their employees, from a turnover standpoint or from a cost efficiency standpoint, it's always going to be there. And we're going to make a dent in it. But I can't think of, really a time, and I'm not pessimistic. I just really can't think of a time when an employer is going to be like, nope, turnovers at nothing, and actually inflation went down and healthcare is free. So
Well, right. Like, have we ever experienced a year in our lifetime when healthcare costs were not going up?
exactly, and
Mm, I don't think so.
so it's ever present.
Okay.
So I think that yes, it's always going to be focused on, but one of the big things is, like, what's the now piece? Like,
Right.
what are the companies looking for right now? And I think there's a couple different things. There's a really big push right now for employers to figure out what they want to be, from a just a culture standpoint,
Right.
what they want their brand to represent externally, and what they want their brand to represent internally. So
Mhm.
people no longer just work for a paycheck. They're working for organizations. This is a broad statement, but they're working for organizations that they truly believe in.
They're working for a purpose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's that purpose driven life that is really coming to the front. And I think that HR leaders and the executives and companies themselves are really starting to say, okay, how far do I go with my belief system or my company's belief system in representing it outside and inside? And one of the biggest ways is how they treat their employees and the benefits that they offer within those walls.
Hmm.
And is that a way to attract people? Is that a way to keep people? Is it a way to keep people happy, and get the right ones in there that are going to stay? So I think that's one of the biggest things at the present time. That again, it's maybe not, and we're all done. Wipe our hands and we're good, but definitely something that's on top of mind. Benefits fall squarely into that. Not diminishing anything around financial. From
Yeah, that's the reality.
gotta
That's
gotta have
part
that.
of the job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gotta have that house in order, right? So
Hmm.
when you
Hmm.
look at, they're still always going to be looking at claims. They're still going to be looking at medical and pharmacy, but I think the ways that it's being looked at on the quality and the outcomes are going to start dictating, what the focus is. Sorry, I got to turn this off
No worries.
because otherwise, sorry. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. And then I think the last piece. So COVID taught us so many lessons, so many lessons, and unforgettable lessons. But one of the biggest things that a lot of employers did was they threw as many point solutions as they possibly could that had a virtual component to them,
Right.
at the wall, and that was not a bad idea. I'd like to go on record as saying that was not a bad idea, uh,
Right.
because we didn't know what we didn't know. Some people, well, not some people, I thought we'd be back to work in 2 months. Fast
Of
forward.
course. Yeah. Yeah. We all did at one point.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
So I think that there was a rush to provide as many point solutions and offerings as possible. And now
Right.
what we're seeing is a lot of companies taking a step back and saying, look, it's not that we don't want to add any. We do, because there's a lot of great stuff out there. We just want to take a look at what we have and see what's working. So that's one of the big tasks for HR leaders right now, is to
Yeah.
say, time out, what works. And
Sure.
as well
Or
as,
what's working together, maybe.
yes. So
Yeah.
uh, you hit on my favorite thing. One of the biggest, in my opinion, one of the biggest false statements that gets made is that somebody will say, "I want to be a part of a client's or a group's ecosystem." Or I want to, if I'm an HR person, I want to add something to my ecosystem, or who's managing my ecosystem. And the actual phrase ecosystem is wrong. It's a
Mm.
universe. So it's
Mm.
not an ecosystem. An ecosystem is something that would work together. If you think of a garden, if you think of planting
Hmm.
a seed in the water, in the sun, and plants, and then bugs come, and then birds come, and then the fruit comes, and then everything goes back in to the soil come the winter time. And I sound like Mr. Green Jeans, but when it does come back, it's there and it all works together. 99% of all of the items in an employer's universe do not work together. They're there, they're cool, people can access them, they can get after it, but very rarely do you see them working with other things. And there are some robust and complex TPAs and hub and aggregators out there, but it's not as easy as it sounds when a vendor or when anybody says, "Oh, we can just share data." You can pass a file, but what are we going to do with it? So that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
And a great point of, do they play well together in that sandbox, or do they play at all?
Right. Right. And should they? I hear what you're saying, and I like the metaphor of a universe because you're going to have different centers of gravity around different types of issues
Mm-hmm.
serving different people across a diverse population. So if you have people who are struggling to access care, or you want to have an emphasis on primary care, early treatment, preventive, that's one thing. But then you'll have people managing chronic disease or managing musculoskeletal issues, connected to work or not. And depending on, we've got 4 or 5 generations in the workplace together, which has
Yes.
never happened before. And they have radically different needs from a health perspective, from a communication perspective. So not everything is going to work all together because that presumes that there's one consumer who needs all those things. And that's not true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you just brought up kind of the one of the biggest things, and it's that multi-generational workforce. And that's, and I don't want to jump to any, line of questioning moving forward, but um one and actually, let me just stop there. This is a great segue to get into other things. Do you care if we go there now?
Let's do it.
Okay. Okay, then I'm going to go back about the not wanting to jump in. Um, but you make a really great point when it comes to multi generations in a workforce and the needs of what the population wants. Um, and also the fact that very few organizations have people that stay there for, a lot of people aren't getting that gold retirement watch. Many are,
Right.
many are, but um, you know, the tenure isn't what it used to be at an organization.
That's right.
One of the biggest things that we've been seeing is just it's a crazy idea, but it's asking people what they want. Um, it is so bizarre.
If
Um,
you want to know, you
yeah,
could just
exactly.
ask.
Yeah, and that's kind of the problem, is that, ooh, maybe you don't want the answer, but end of the day, when you start asking people what they want, you're going to get different answers. And we're
Yeah.
at a point in technology to where you can start getting specific, meeting the needs of the individuals, and focusing in on what are those unmet needs really.
Yeah.
So we do surveys, and we encourage employers to do surveys to their
Yeah.
employees, asking them what they want, but more importantly, what they don't want. Like when you get a survey and you give them 10 questions, rank them, figure out what's not being in that top 10, and being like, ooh, we've really focused on number 8 and no one wants it. Um, not to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could
Yeah.
be.
And I wonder too, I mean, I'm a marketer by trade, and so surveys are in our wheelhouse. And
Mhm.
one of the things that we talk about a lot is that you can't ask people if they want something that they've never heard of. So when we talk about innovation, you're not going to have an employee be like, what I'd really love is something that is a totally new benefit I've never heard of, because it's just not in the horizon of possibility
Yeah.
for people. And so maybe it's more like the lean startup way of understanding people's problems more deeply before you start talking to them about solutions, just because then it's easier for us to do the thinking of, well, what would be a way that solves that problem?
Mhm.
If we could go deeper on understanding the need. I don't know.
No, I completely agree with you. It's interesting. You know, the whole concept of social determinants of health gets thrown around, the same way that big data got thrown around 10 years
Right.
ago, to where people would say it, but it's like, what does that mean? It's like, I don't really
And
actually
like
know.
mobile and big data, AI.
It's like, is it mobile? Well, it's mobile enhanced. What does that mean? It's sort of like, oh, which is the fish fresh? It's fresh frozen. Timeout. Um, so yes. So when you really start looking at social determinants of health, the buzz around it is, oh, and we can find out someone's zip code, and we can find out, um, food deserts. Like those are really kind of the big two that are thrown around. And great, you got to start somewhere.
Yep.
But when you really start thinking about it, and if you have a low paid workforce and you think, wow, this person is just over the 30 hours, and there's multiple dependents, and there's is this a single family, does this
Yep.
person have multiple jobs, do they have access to transportation issues, do they have uh, you know housing insecurity from a standpoint of can they make rent,
Right.
what is that
Credit issues.
credit issues, what does that second job look like, and then you give them a cancer diagnosis,
Oh
and
my God.
it's like, okay, now let's figure out how we're going to help them and really look at what social determinants of health are. So
Yeah.
it is interesting, and I call it out just because it gets thrown around, in my opinion, far too often. And it's like, okay, well, what's your answer to it? And again, got to start somewhere, but oftentimes it's, well, we can target them with messaging.
Oh no. I'm
Fantastic.
the one that has to help. My team has to write the messaging. So
Yes. Exactly. I don't mean to
yeah.
sound so pessimistic or down on the industry, because it's an industry that I absolutely love. But there,
Yeah, but messaging alone doesn't create change.
right,
It has to be structural
and
in the
it goes back to your
product, in the
point of,
solution
yeah.
itself. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so I want to shift us into, we talked about the challenges today are kind of like wallpaper. Maybe they're like a little exacerbated, but they've always been there.
Mhm.
So, I'm curious if what you can tell us about like how HR leaders should be like, what are the strategies that smart HR leaders are pursuing that are helping them navigate this and cope with what's going on right now?
Yeah. That population analytics is so important. Knowing what you're going for, knowing what you're trying to hit there, looking
Hmm.
at your organization, from not just a diverse makeup, but really looking at, if you have 30% of your population that is wanting to see age 65 and retire and be done with it, like what are we going to do there? You have
Hmm.
how to transfer that knowledge internally from the senior people down. We're in a For most of our clients and companies, we're in a remote area where it used to be you would just sit down next to the new person and walk them through step by step what they need to
Right.
be doing. We don't do that. So I think that it's not just career planning. It's not just meeting the needs of a variety of individuals. It's not taking care of the new hire that just either did or didn't graduate college, because quite frankly, that's even up for debate on how important it is. And I'm sure the University of Kansas School of Medicine would hate me saying that. But, it's just things have evolved. And so I think that's one of the biggest strategies, is to really dig into the population. Um,
Right.
and there are those, the health plans that have always been there that are a bit bread and butter, because you know sometimes you need an HMO, sometimes you need to have a PPO, sometimes you need a high deductible. But as we evolve, there's
Yeah.
more areas of specificity to meet the needs of those individuals when it comes to the health plans.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pick on the health plans at the moment. I'm going to save that for a second, but I think that there's the opportunity there. So population understanding. Um,
Hmm.
Second, just I don't see this as a flash in the pan. I don't see it as the next shiny object. But I love lifestyle spending accounts. I think those are great. I think that when you look at what has worked and what hasn't worked, when you look at the evolution, um, it used to be a $50 gift card for a biometric screening was all you needed to do to incentivize somebody for an entire year. Um, that doesn't hold anymore.
Hmm.
One of the things that, again, COVID taught us was work from home is kind of expensive to the individual. And so when you can start having these specific types of um, financial wins for individual by
Yeah.
saying, hey,
Yeah.
Get your desk set up. Get Obviously I don't have a ring light, otherwise I'd look 20 times better. But get these types of things
Uh-huh.
for working from home, and we're going to specify it. And by the way, we are going to have a wellness stipend for you, but if you don't want to work out in a gym, totally fine. We're not going to give you a gym membership. If you want to
Yeah.
go buy shoes, if you want to do something else, like, that's great.
Subscribe to an app.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
putting
Yeah.
it's recognizing individuals want different things, and it's putting the opportunity of choice in their hands. So that's another big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things that, I guess our experiences with patient and the flexibility to spend on whatever is out of pocket across medical, dental, pharmacy, vision, even veterinary care, so you can take care of the health needs of your whole family, including the fur babies.
Hmm.
That flexibility is huge. People are like, what about if it's in network or not in network? Or does it have to be a qualified expense? We're like, we don't even know. We don't even know what you're buying. We just know if it's an improved provider. Like
So
if they accept a visa and their MCC code is that they're a medical provider, your card will work. Up to you. And so that flexibility has been really cool because what it means is that the people who can't access care, they need that liquidity in order to like make the ends meet, but they need to go to the urgent care or whatever, they can do it. And it turns that surprise thing into a manageable expense. But then likewise, when you've got a mom managing the healthcare of like her partner and three kids and a dog, she puts it all in the cart and it's organized in one place. And
mhm.
so we've been hearing like really different use cases about how people are using the card because everybody just needs a little liquidity sometimes. And then you hear, people saying like, "Oh, I'm using it to organize my healthcare expenses." And I'm thinking as a marketer like, "Wow, I never told you to use it like that." But that's how they find value in it. And so that's just been like a really fun order of discovery. But I think the takeaway was that people love the flexibility of it and the freedom after a lot of benefits that have been kind of limiting
Yeah,
in past years.
absolutely. And I will um, clearly check my privilege at the door and recognize, where I am, and that, I did actually get hit with a unexpected bill recently, and I was nothing like opening the mail and being like, what the
Being
hell,
like, "Oh, what?"
how was this? And it's like, oh, this is the one I have to pay. And then questioning, was this run through insurance? And the answer was, yeah,
Yeah.
oh, it was. And you still owe that. Um, so
And we're in the industry. Like we actually know how this works. The same thing happened to me and I was like, "This is a month of rent." You know?
exactly. And so there was that. And then we have a new dog that is sleeping off to my left, and she needed to go to the vet. And I think our vet is buying a summer home because that wasn't cheap. And, like, all of these different things. And, when not everybody, to your point, not everybody can go, oh, wow, well, okay, this is just going to be a tough month. um,
No, exactly. And it's not really about debt necessarily, but it's about flexibility.
mhm,
And actually, when you give people flexibility, they have the ability to manage these things. They just need a little bit of time.
yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're focused on. It's about being able to know confidently because it's embedded in the benefits level that I have something in my wallet and I can always pay. And then I will figure out later how to pay that off out of an HSA, out of an FSA. Which one of those accounts do I need to pull this from? Or I just need to pay this off over the next 6 paychecks.
Hmm.
And, we've had people, there was a woman whose story we told in a recent video who found a spot on her scalp and went to a dermatologist and they said, "Oh, that's cancer. You need to have that removed." And it was going to be $450. And she's like, "I paid it off over a few months." And having the ability to do that, imagine if she had not.
Yeah.
What would the expense be then to her, to her employer? I mean, these are the kinds of things that we can unlock. And again, it's just giving people flexibility to manage their expenses. And it turns out they can handle a lot more if they just have a little time,
Hmm.
to take care of it.
I mean, I think you make a great point, and it, to me, it just speaks of trying to understand what an individual is going through that's not in your direct line of sight. And for just to bring it back into an HR world, like if you have an employer that has 3,000 employees, that's 3,000 different needs.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that you brought up was the concept of, for me at least, brought it up. This isn't financial mismanagement. This isn't
No,
somebody's done something wrong. It's just,
no.
oh my God, those are big bills.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and
Healthcare spending is almost always unexpected and unplanned.
yeah,
And so whose finances are immune from that kind of bill that you just talked about?
exactly. One of the surveys that we always do takes a look at just an individual that could absorb a $5,000 unplanned expense. And the percent of individuals that can absorb an unplanned $5,000 expense is very low. And it's not
Very, very
because
low.
the majority of those people don't save, don't manage money properly, anything like that. It's just that's a really big bill that they just got saddled with.
That's right. That's right. And everybody's running lean,
Yep,
especially with everything that's been going on
exactly.
in inflation and all of that. So, well, Cameron, this has been awesome, and we could talk all day. I want to ask you one more question, which is you've obviously been super successful throughout your career, and I'm wondering if there's a leadership lesson or something that has really carried you through that you could leave for our listeners as a takeaway.
Absolutely. Can I have two?
Sure.
All right. I had a boss who basically said, "I need you to get in the game." I could talk a lot. I had ideas, but when it came to getting in front of clients, when it came to just expressing myself, when it came to, and I know, like I'm surprised too, but
You can't express
I
yourself.
know evolution, everything's an evolution. But I just got, we were talking, and he's like, you need to trust yourself and you need to get in the game. We need you. And
Wow.
so it was one of those things to where I just kind of put it in the back of my head. It's like, get on the field. You can't ride the bench. Get on the field.
Yep.
So that's number one. Number two, are you familiar with the Antarctic explorer Ernest Shackleton?
I know the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a book that was written called Endurance, and it is a phenomenal read, and I recommend it to anybody. Not only is it just a cool adventure book, but it's probably the best business book I've ever read. And it's all
Awesome.
about Shackleton's adventures in trying to cross Antarctic, because pretty much from when they set sail, everything went wrong. But he had
Oh my God.
assembled a great team, individuals all had unique skills and talents, and they worked, and he played up to every single one of those skills. There were decisions that needed to be made that you were like, ooh, that seems a little, questionable. But end of the day, you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So I just can't recommend that book, or at least that story, because it's one of those, when you think it can't get any worse, just turn the page, because it does.
Oh my
But it
gosh.
has an amazing ending, and there's lots of different business lessons to be pulled out of that.
I love it. That's going on my list for sure. Well, thank you, Cameron. This has been really, really fun. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I'm Laura Cave, and this has been the Patient Podcast. If you'd like to share feedback or contact us directly about this episode or any other, drop us a note at podcast@patient.com. That's podcast@PAYTIENT.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.